the final of the 400 meters. And here it is. Brown's in the outside lane there. Next to him, Williams, the American Negro. Look at Brown's tremendous stride, but he's taking it easy. He's holding his effort back rather unexpectedly. Williams is a beautiful mover. He's a Black Panther. He's not waiting, he's cutting loose. He's coming up in the back stretch, very threatening. He's gaining, hand over fist. Brown's going well, but he's leaving it too late. That Negro's dangerous. Going into the bend, Williams will drive it home before they get into the straight. Brown's got to fight for it now. The Negro's got it. 20 yards from the straight. Williams is ahead. He's going away. Brown looks beaten. There's Roberts and Laval on the inside. Laval's going strong. Roberts is challenging him, but Williams leads. He'll do it. No, look. Brown sprinting.
We talk about sports being a place where you supposedly have a level playing field. You have rules. You have an audience. You have judges, and everyone competes equally. So we try to take that and move it out into society and say, this is how society should be.
At the most notorious sports event ever staged, 18 African Americans challenged discrimination on the world stage. Their presence in Berlin is a blow to racial prejudice on both sides of the Atlantic. The unprecedented effort is largely unknown, and their stories forgotten.
I love my gold medal, but in history, it's not as important as their medal. There's just something so special about what they did and who they did it in front of.
One of the great tragedies of the story is you have 18 athletes who were on the world stage. One of them is remembered.
An American fist won a victory, but it wasn't the final victory. No, that victory is going to take a little longer, and a whole lot more American fists.
We make mistakes, we correct the mistakes, then plummet down into false, needless depression.
$250,000 people are in Washington, where Roosevelt is to take the oath of office. A funny little man called Hitler had come into power in Germany. This nation is asking for action, and action now.
The 11th and greatest Olympic Games of modern times is one that will live forever.
(1936) is a time when you see America captured in the Great Depression. You've got thousands of African Americans who have left the South to go to the North. But by 1936, there was this real worry that African Americans would not be able to attain the American dream.
Think about what was America like during that period. This is a period long before civil rights era and marching. It was not uncommon during that era that there'd be a public spectacle of a lynching, and that people would come out for, to picnic.
African Americans were not considered full citizens. When you have just an understanding of how African Americans were treated by the country, through Jim Crow, it's very obvious that they were not considered full members of the nation.
Well, practically anything that had any social implications was affected by the racial situation. All my friends who were mostly Caucasian, they wanted me to be in the Scouts with them, but I was told that I wasn't eligible for obvious reasons. I still felt resentful of it. I was born in Oakland, California. Got out of high school and the Depression was definitely on. And a friend of mine said, can't get any good jobs, so let's go back to school. I knew what Cal was all about. We used to go up even before I got out of high school, and sneak into where the track guys were practicing and watch the real athletes perform. So I went there and signed up for fall track. Tuition was $26 a semester.
During this period, new opportunities appear for black athletes. A few universities in the North and West cautiously experiment with accepting small numbers of African Americans into their athletic programs.
Dad had a pretty rough early life. When they got up here, they discovered that the playground was a block from the crib. That's where he picked up his nickname, Rabbit. He had no intention of going to college. His idea was, once I graduate from Tilden, I can get more hours at the fish market and help my mom with the family better. He was running in a track meet, and Marquette's athletic director saw the boy run. He said, "That's our man right there." Jennings offered him a scholarship. My father said, "Well, I don't know. Let me go talk to my mom about that." And here's what she said. She said, "Boy, if I've got to get on my hands and knees and scrub these white people's floors, you are going to college."
There was a dual life experience in this country, which included sports. Basketball was considered a contact sport. So there were black basketball teams and black baseball teams because there was no touchy. That was not allowed. So track was the sport that you could compete in.
So I grew up in California. I got into track and field purely by accident. I was playing around one afternoon on the field, and Eddie Lee said, "Jimmy, I want you to run a 660. Well, I ran it, and I beat the guy. He said, "You're a quarter miler." No athletic scholarships available for track in those days at UCLA. However, a young girl, I call her a snotty-nosed girl, looked down her nose at me one day and said, "You're dumb like all the other fellas. I'm much brighter than any of you." And I spent the next 2.5 years proving to her that I could beat her in every subject. And that's how I became an all-A student. Well, I should have graduated in February of '36. And I didn't really decide whether to try for the Olympics till that spring.
The International Olympic Committee chose Berlin as the host city in 1931. 2 years later, Adolf Hitler becomes chancellor. In the following years, Germany radically changes.
The world is moving towards war. Hitler is consolidating his power. And so the Olympics was really right in the middle of that and became both tied to the domestic considerations, but also obviously international considerations.
His Nazi party builds a legal structure to enact Hitler's racist theories. The Nazis passed the Nuremberg laws. These laws strip Jews, gypsies, and blacks of German citizenship and prohibit them from marrying or having sexual relations with persons of German blood. These laws provide the legal framework for the systemic persecution of Jews and other minorities.
Aber die Empörung natürlich in der jüdischen Bevölkerung war groß, weil auch in dieser Zeit bereits also Berufsverbote erlassen wurden. Journalisten wurden aus den Zeitungen entlassen. Natürlich sorgte das vor allem Unruhe auch im Ausland, insbesondere in den USA.
People began to understand who Hitler was and what his goals were. And so there was a lot of discussion about what should happen and whether or not the U.S. should be there.
As reports of persecution in Germany reach America, Jewish groups organize and launch a boycott of German goods and services, and the Olympics become a part of the campaign to pressure the German regime.
All the Jewish athletes were lobbied not to go. So you would have the rabbis go and talk to the athletes and to explain to them exactly what was happening in Germany.
There was a broad-scale movement to boycott the Berlin Olympics, but arguments led by people who were very sympathetic to the games not being blatantly disrupted by political concerns. Most certainly, the American Olympic Committee, led by Avery Brundage, they were in favor of going.
Avery Brundage was an Olympian. He competed in the 1912 games, and he was a self-made success. And he became president of the AAU. He believed that white was right, and everything else was secondary. He was determined to make sure that the team went to Berlin.
There was a need to convince others that everything was going to be okay. There was not going to be discrimination on the basis of race or religion. This meant in Germany that Jewish athletes would be given the opportunity to compete. It meant that African American athletes would be safe if they went to Nazi Germany.
One of the reasons for the discussion of the boycott was the fact that these laws existed and the fact that you didn't know whether or not you could protect African American athletes or Jewish athletes or other athletes in Nazi Germany, or if they would be jailed for something that was made up by the German laws.
I can assure you the discussion had more to do with whether the Jewish athletes should be able to compete or not, but it was not about the black athletes.
Top Jewish athletes, including the entire Long Island University basketball team, refuse to participate if the games are held in Berlin. Black athletes raise their voices and join the debate.
My dad and Jesse Owens and the high jumper Dave Albritton wrote a letter to Avery Brundage saying that they wanted to compete in the Olympics. They didn't want to boycott. You've invested your whole career in running. Running has brought you prominence. Running has brought you experience and exposure. Now, here come the Olympics and, you know, the height and peak of track and field, and we're not going to go. Let's go over there and dust these Germans who think they're better than us.
Being 17, 18 years old, I think you would really be torn not to want to put on display your hard work, your efforts. The Olympics only comes once every 4 years, and you never know what's going to happen. So you can't take that time for granted.
Walter White, the president of the NAACP, replies in a letter, "I realize how great a sacrifice it will be for you to give up the trip to Europe and to forego the acclaim your athletic prowess will unquestionably bring you. But participation would, I firmly believe, do irreparable harm. The moral issue involved is far greater than immediate benefit."
The NAACP, their perspective was you're representing a racist country. And so you're going to go over to a racist country and represent another racist country and try to create the message that your racist country is better than their racist country.
Walter White pleaded to stay out of the 1936 games. It would just bring more sympathy to the black cause. But then you had a number of newspapers, the Pittsburgh Courier in particular. Editor Robert L. Vann made a huge case that African Americans should participate in the games. He even sent the U.S. Olympic Committee a check because they were being boycotted by some Jewish patrons. And his argument basically was that here was an opportunity on the world stage to disprove white supremacy. That would go much further than some kind of moral protest.
The NAACP said not go, and then, of course, the defender said to go. But the defender understood how politically powerful those moments could be.
The black newspapers looked at it and said, you have an opportunity to open international doors and put actual African-American athletes on an international stage and allow people to see that we're human beings.
They thought the 1936 games were just too important to pass up for black people.
Telegrams, phone calls, and letters demanding an official American boycott besieged Avery Brundage. With the boycott camp gaining momentum, Brundage and his chief supporter, General Charles Sherrill, decide to travel to Germany to silence the opposition. Hitler worries an American boycott will have a domino effect and destroy his plans to showcase the Third Reich to the world. The Nazis give Brundage the VIP treatment. Impressed with what he saw, Brundage, upon his return, reports no evidence of discrimination or persecution of the Jews. He also carries assurances from the Nazis that Jewish athletes will compete on the German team and that black and Jewish athletes will be welcomed as equals.
He definitely wanted to bring the team to Berlin. And one of those ways was to make sure there was at least a token Jewish athlete.
The Nazi regime knew where to look. Gretel Bergmann has fled Germany for Britain, where she breaks that country's record in the women's high jump. She is preparing to compete for the British Olympic team. Nazi officials, eager to silence worldwide criticism of anti-Semitism, order Gretel back to Germany.
Well, I didn't want to go back, but they told my father, go to England and get your daughter, because they wanted one Jew on the team. You did what the Nazis told you to do. They told me to compete, and I went and competed.
With Bergmann now on Germany's team, Avery Brundage announces that the Nazis are fulfilling their pledge.
We of the American Olympic Committee believe that every red-blooded American will support the campaign. The Olympic Games belong to the athletes and not to the politicians. Never allow our athletes to be made martyrs to a cause not their own.
Boycott backers, including New York Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia, members of Congress, and many college coaches, are not convinced. Pro-boycott newspapers call Brundage a Nazi stooge. He argues that American participation in the Games should not be held hostage to a Jewish communist conspiracy.
There was a big surge in the discussion, and there was a vote on whether the U.S. should send a team.
On December 7th, 1935, the bitter boycott battle comes to a head. The members of the AAU meet in New York to finally settle the matter. After hours of angry verbal clashes between the executive committee, a preliminary ballot is deadlocked. Realizing that he may not have the support to defeat the pro-boycott forces, Brundage postpones the final vote. That evening, he launches an aggressive campaign to win support for American participation. The next morning, the rival factions file into the meeting room to cast their ballots. When the results are tallied, only 2 votes separate the sides. The American team will go to Berlin, a win for Brundage and for Hitler. On July 11th, 1936, President Roosevelt and Mayor LaGuardia joined thousands of spectators on Randall's Island in New York City. The nation's top track and field athletes have gathered for the Olympic trials.
The temperature was around 100. There was no shade at all. The only place you could find was underneath the bleachers. People were dropping like flies in the hot weather. Guys that were supposed to be sure things, but something happened. Ulysses Peacock pulled a muscle. He would have made it.
It was hot, humid. I don't think a single athlete who participated in those games lost less than 10 pounds. I know I lost almost 15.
I remember that he told me about some of his competitors, you know, Jesse Owens, Ben Johnson from Columbia University, and Mac Robinson, Jackie Robinson's big brother. All these people were challenging him. And I said, but they weren't as fast as you were. They said, oh, they were pretty fast.
Jackie Robinson always looked up to his big brother, Mac Robinson. And Mac was renowned for having all of the titles at Pasadena Community College. Mac Robinson had to believe in himself that if he could get to New York, he could make the team.
Mac Robinson does not have a coach and runs in a battered pair of spikes that have already served him through 2 full track seasons. A group of Pasadena businessmen raises $150 for Mac Robinson's train fare. Confident Mac tells reporters he's run faster times than both Owens and Metcalf, but Metcalf is no stranger to challenges on the track.
In 32, Dad was in the second photo finish in history in the 100 meters.
At the LA Coliseum, the 100 meters race becomes one of the most hotly contested races in Olympic history. 2 men cross the finish line with times of exactly 10.38 seconds on the clock, equaling the world record. The American Athletic Union spends hours evaluating the results. Metcalf receives the silver, but maintains he is the winner. Observers and film evidence of the race support Metcalf's claim. Ralph will wait 4 years for another chance.
In 1936, when he went to the finals on Randall's Island, my dad failed to qualify in his favorite event, the 200 meters. He finished 5th and regurgitated after the race. There was 0.2 of a second separating the top 5. So he only qualified in the 100 for Berlin.
Mac Robinson finishes second to Jesse Owens, and both qualify for the 200-meter dash in Berlin. In the broad jump competition, John Brooks hopes to make the team this time.
You know, my dad wasn't allowed to compete in 32, even though he qualified, because there was a white athlete that the team had decided they wanted to push. And he told him, you cheated me, but you won't get the chance to cheat me again. I know he was upset, and you know, there's definitely some negative feelings there.
He was born in Vidalia, Louisiana. He came to Chicago to live with his aunt. He got interested in track while he was in high school. And that was the beginning of him trying to do records and that kind of thing.
My dad went to University of Chicago and Jesse Owens went to Ohio State. They competed a lot.
At the Randall's Island trials, John Brooks falls just inches short of Jesse Owens' winning mark. Both men will compete in the long jump in the Olympics. In all, 10 African-American men run and jump past the other hopefuls to represent Uncle Sam in track and field. Williams, Metcalf, Brooks, Luval, Owens, Woodruff, Pollard, Johnson, Albritton, Robinson. At the women's trials at Brown University, only 2 black women land spots on the American team: hurdler Tidy Pickett and sprinter Louise Stokes.
My mother was the oldest of a large family. 8 girls and 1 boy. My mother started taking up athletics, running, basketball, anything to do with sports. After school, she started racing the boys down the railroad track. They would pick on her, tell them she wasn't fast. And what she would do in the morning before school is run the railroad ties, every single tie. So that's how she developed her quickness. And then she became quite good at it. And after a while, she started beating the boys, and after that, they started leaving her alone.
Mother didn't talk a lot, and so we got bits and pieces of her history. She was one of two children. She has an older brother, 2 years older. They were born on the south side of Chicago.
We know that her and her brother were often competitive, and racing was one of the things that they loved to do. And so it just seemed something that was pretty innate in her. They were often stories told about who would beat who. Yeah.
But she was fastest, of course.
Of course.
She was a star on the basketball team. And that takes some doing, since Mother was only like 5'2" and a half or 5'3". She attended the recreational events and things at the Chicago Park District on the south side. She was discovered there, so she started running for the Park District.
The story of these two women, Tiny Ann Pickett and Louise Stokes, is crucially important because of their involvement in 32. There was a real struggle to get these two Black women into the games in 32.
Tidy Pickett and Louise Stokes forge a friendship by supporting one another through a string of indignities at the 32 games. During a nap in their sleeping car on the train ride to Los Angeles, teammate Babe Dietrichson drenches them with a pitcher of ice water. And just hours before they are to compete at the LA Coliseum, the women's track coach replaces Tidy and Louise with white athletes.
My mother, bless her, didn't complain. She never spoke an ill word about it or anybody. She just came home, everybody said congratulations, and without saying anything, they understood. They were like two peas in a pod, trying to figure out their place in the world.
By 36, they are now at really the peak of their own athletic abilities, and there was great hope by achieving Olympic gold, which is what they set out for. They thought it would also send a message about the role that Black women play.
Friends, neighbors, other coaches put on fundraisers, anything they could to raise the money.
In Chicago, the boxing trials sell out. 18-year-old slugger Howell King outpunches Chester Rutecki with a series of powerful body shots as the majority white crowd boos. An unprecedented 5 Black boxers join America's hardest-hitting mitt-men on the Olympic team. Boxers Clark, Johnson, Oliver, Wilson, King, and the first ever Black weightlifting Olympian, John Terry, round out the team. 18 African-American athletes heading to Berlin resounds across Black America. African-American communities focus on the Olympics for the first time. Black newspapers send reporters to cover the happenings in Berlin. Hailed as the Black Eagles, they become instant heroes and a source of pride.
Mr. Brundage, one of America's prospects in the forthcoming games.
The 400 boys and girls who will march into the stadium on August 1st will constitute the finest team we have ever sent abroad.
Brundage, having these Black athletes participate in 36 Olympics, I think he understood what that represented. It wasn't going to necessarily guarantee a victory for the United States, but it was going to guarantee success. And so he was using these Black athletes as the auxiliaries that they were identified as. For me, that was very clear. He took advantage of what was obviously opportunity.
Just weeks before the Olympic team's departure for Germany, boxer Max Schmeling takes on Joe Louis, the Brown Bomber, America's most renowned Black athlete. Much more is at stake than just a champion's belt.
Max Schmeling, who was considered an over-the-hill German fighter, he carried the stigma of Nazism in Germany with him.
Joe Louis was revered. Blacks would gather everywhere to listen to Joe Louis fights. The ebb and flow of the black community went with the Joe Louis fights.
In 1936, right before the Olympics, Max Schmeling defeated Joe Louis. At that point, the greatest boxer in the world had been defeated by a Nazi. Hitler was able to reinforce this mythos that even a broken down, over-the-hill Nazi could defeat an African American.
Und dass der Schwarze eben auch noch K.O. geschlagen hatte, das war natürlich ein gigantischer Triumph für die Leute, die ohnehin also versuchten, die farbigen Athleten als zweitklassig und minderwertig hinzustellen.
What I do remember my dad, John Brooks, talking about was, if nothing else, he and the athletes that were with him only had one goal, and that was to make sure that Hitler knew that African-American athletes were not inferior. I remember him mocking about, them saluting Hitler, and he said, we just wanted to go and do like this. But, that was his biggest focus. Their passion was to disprove Hitler and to show him how incorrect he was.
Mother was fearless. I don't know that she had fears leaving her family or, any anxiety about that. My grandmother, I don't think she liked the idea very much. I think it was kind of a struggle. It's my understanding that John Brooks went to my grandmother personally and asked for her permission to let my mother go to Germany.
Personally, I would have been afraid to let my son or daughter leave outside the 4-block radius. You have to think about how people felt about us as a race of people. If I let my daughter go, will she ever come back?
Whether it be racism in America or in Germany, they want to get out on the track and say, hey, we're African American, we can do this. You can't let anything stop you.
We're going to bring home the bacon, aren't we, girls? Yeah!
To a symphony of cheering well-wishers, blaring ship sirens, and the screaming of tugboat whistles, the American Olympic squad, 400 strong, boards the luxury liner SS Manhattan. Destination, Germany, and the 1936 Summer Olympics.
Once you make the team, you got instant affluence. They were sort of given the old VIP treatment, getting ready to catch the boat. And of course, that's a big event, because the only boat I've ever been on has been the Southern Pacific ferry boat, going to San Francisco. And there's this huge ship, with all the big chimneys and smokestacks and horns blowing, and even had a band playing. And so the old boat pulls out, and here we go.
It was very close quarters. There's first class and steering. We were more or less in the bottom of the barrel, the athletes, because there wasn't a lot of room. All the press was on there, the reporters were there. Everybody was on the one boat. We got to know each other much better this way. They had parties and music and songs.
Well, we were always in and out of each other's rooms. Because, most of the guys that I enjoy being around were those guys from Louisiana State. Well, we play cards and tell lies and things like that. Just what you'd expect of a bunch of college kids. I was a college sophomore. Well, there were a few older guys like Ralph Metcalf. He was somewhat older. But it was just nice to be in the company of people that you'd read about.
They all knew him. He was a big celebrity and then a role model for most of them, including Jesse Owens. And they were all tight, and they get in the cabin at night and sing songs and start signifying on each other, just little teases and stuff.
We spent a lot of time eating on the Manhattan on the way over, afterwards trying to catch our weight up. In fact, on the trip over, we had to make an unscheduled stop at Plymouth, England to get more food. Of course, most of this was due to Zamperini. He was a big eater.
During the stop in England, John Woodruff sends a letter to his fans back home thanking them for a $55 bank draft. He writes, "I never knew there was so much water on Earth. It seems endless. I have a hard time getting used to the rocking on the boat." The 10-day transatlantic voyage is a new kind of challenge for many of the athletes.
Practically no training was taking place, so we had to start from scratch. We'd jog up and down the deck, but it was kind of weird. We'd do push-ups, and the weather was kind of cold, and I got sick one day.
He was kind of out of sorts on the SS Manhattan. He was sleeping late, he was not working out, but he did better than Tidy Pickett.
On the ship, one of Mother's biggest problems was she was seasick. From the time she got on the ship until the ship landed. And so that depleted her physically. So she didn't get to enjoy, probably, I'm sure, the way she would have wanted to, you know, a lot of the festivities on the ship and going there.
Not all of the Olympians are welcome at shipboard activities.
Sometimes you tried to sneak up to go to the movies up in first class, but as soon as the stewards saw you, they chased you out. We resented it very much. But it is one of those things, we didn't resent it enough to probably mutiny.
We weren't first class, and they did manage to get all the brothers together, as you know. Don't you want to be with your own kind? It seemed to me like it was kind of a put down, since it reminds you of like putting you down in the galley, all together in the same room. You could still get that feeling that there was something there that they felt they were doing you a favor, or maybe they were making it easier for themselves. But it didn't matter because we were all friends, and in some ways that might have been to an advantage. I knew a couple of boxers. I used to go over to watch them work out.
One afternoon, the boxing coach springs a surprise on Howell King. If King wants to keep his spot on the team, he must fight Chester Rutecki again. Howell jumps into the makeshift ring on the deck of the Manhattan and whips Rutecki a second time. King feels this will not be the end of it.
On one hand, there's no doubt that there were making friends across racial lines. But the reality is the tensions on the boat were the same tensions you would have anywhere in the United States. That there were athletes, white athletes, who were concerned about their black teammates, about the kind of interaction that being this close quarter would have. There were sort of tensions between male athletes and female athletes, regardless of race. Many male athletes believing that these women had no role in the Olympics. That the Olympics was really about masculinity and athleticism that was beyond the female body. And then you also have these 18 people coming together. There are also tensions within that because you have competition. The tensions on the boat mirror the tensions in America.
18-year-old Marty Glickman is a Syracuse freshman set to compete in the 4x100-meter relay. He and Sam Stoller of Michigan are the only Jewish members of the U.S. track team. Glickman tells Stoller, "The anti-Semitism we might encounter in Berlin would be no worse than what I faced growing up in Brooklyn."
Ralph Metcalf, who was more seasoned and he had a certain authority and respect, he counseled all the members of this group not to worry about politics, to just focus on winning, winning for themselves, winning for their country. He really said, you know, block everything else out that's going on.
With the Americans on the high seas, the Germans begin to renege on their promises.
I remember when that letter came, nobody was home. The dog was lying outside. I still see that everything. It was a printed form letter. Too bad that you worked so hard that you couldn't make the team. That's what they told me. And there wasn't a thing I could do about it. Nobody cared. You couldn't. If you didn't like it, get the hell out of here, you know. It was not a good time. Oh, my God.
The German track and field team claims Gretel Bergmann is injured. She's not only cut from the squad, but her high jump records are wiped from the books. The young athletes pack the rails as the SS Manhattan glides into harbor. The Americans watch the large and growing crowd of Germans, not knowing what kind of reception to expect. The young athletes disembark to a sea of swastikas.
When we arrived and disembarked, they took us up to the Rathaus and served us. Each of us had a small glass of 25-year-old port. Well, up to that time, I'd never realized how delightful a good wine could taste. This was excellent wine.
In August, the Olympic Games are held in Berlin, which Hitler has transformed into the showplace of the Third Reich. On this occasion, he intends that foreign visitors be impressed by Nazi efficiency and the material achievements of his new order. The American teams arrive, ready to show what they can do.
We arrived in Berlin, and there was this mob of young people, girls, well, a lot of girls. Wo ist Jesse? Wo ist Jesse? Wo ist Jesse? Remember that Jesse had set 4 world records here in the United States that year, so they wanted to see him. Well, Jesse got off. These little girls had scissors, and they started snipping off his clothes. Jesse got back as fast as he could.
Und in Berlin wurden sie denn von dem Oberbürgermeister Lippert empfangen. So war das aber generell. Alle Mannschaften wurden sie empfangen. Und bei den Amerikanern hat man damals einen ganz besonderen Wert gelegt. Und dann sind sie dann hier ins Olympische Dorf.
Herr Owens, how do you like the Olympic Village? You do well. Wie gefällt es Ihnen im Olympischen Dorf?
I think the Olympic Village is one of the 7 wonders of the world.
Do you get American food? Bekommen Sie auch hier amerikanisches?
Yes, we have American cooks, and the food is very fine and cooked in American style.
It looked like a country club. The Olympic Village was landscaped, and all the buildings were brand new. In fact, it later was to become what amounted to a military academy. And it was set up with the cottage-type barracks. And every country had its own dining hall. And since we had one of the largest teams, and we had all the goodies, all the foreign athletes wanted to be our friends immediately. The village had every facility that you could imagine. For instance, things like barbershops. I had a tooth filled there.
It was kind of an unreal world because they had been so used to the reality of what was back home, Jim Crow America. They were being treated as equals, and they were being welcomed even by supposedly, you know, this very racist Nazi society. I think for a lot of them, it must have been a huge relief, but also a wonderful surprise.
Die Wehrmacht hatte ein großes Unterhaltungsprogramm zusammengestellt. Es gab sowohl Filmberichte, Spielfilme, Wochenschauen, die hier gezeigt wurden, als auch Berliner Künstler, die hier wechselnd jeden Abend auftraten. Alle Bewohner konnten an diesen bunten Abenden als Zuschauer teilnehmen. Und es war auch vorgesehen, dass sich Athleten, wenn sie es konnten, mit Instrumenten, mit Gesang auch bei den bunten Abenden beteiligen konnten.
We all had some kind of a card which allowed us to ride anywhere in Berlin free of charge. And of course, on the street, the people recognized us immediately. And they would come up to us for autographs, and they'd want to talk, and they'd invite you in to have a cup of coffee or something. I felt that they really were sincere with their warmth and with their desire to, you know, to make you feel at home.
Die Nationalsozialisten haben sich natürlich nicht die Gelegenheit entgehen lassen, die Spiele als Propagandainstrument auch zu benutzen. Also die ganze Stadt wurde zu einem Propagandaelement der Spiele gemacht.
The Nazis orchestrate every detail to impress the visitors and athletes. The German press receives orders to publish only positive stories about black athletes, and all anti-Semitic signs and graffiti disappear. Nazis caution Berliners to welcome all international visitors, regardless of race or color.
That probably was a pretty magical 10 days, but it still came down to the fact that this was a staged, choreographed, directed environment created by the Nazis for political purposes.
Initially, Hitler was not interested in the Olympic Games. It was a good chance that he would have not wanted to invest in the Olympic Games until Leni Riefenstahl, who realized that this was an enormous opportunity.
Leni Riefenstahl proves herself by making the Nazis' most powerful propaganda film, Triumph of the Will. Leni and the Nazi inner circle persuade Hitler to think of the press as a piano keyboard on which they could play, and the Games a world stage to show off the glorious new Germany in the Aryan master race.
There were perfect storms coming together, and Hitler wanted to use the Games. He had an agenda. The agenda was to prove the Aryan race was better.
On August 1st, 1936, with the magnificent airship Hindenburg flying low over the Olympic Stadium, 110,000 spectators fill the stadium to witness the opening ceremonies and catch a glimpse of the Führer.
Through these flag-bedecked streets rides Adolf Hitler, host to the worldwide gathering of sport enthusiasts to open the 1936 Olympiad.
On the opening day of the Games, we were bussed down just in front of the Berlin Stadium. Saw people on each side, and in front of these people were at least a double row of brown shirts, all in full battle regalia, and in front of those a row of black shirts, also in full battle regalia. I felt that that day they could have marched to war right then and there.
They had this big sort of a marshalling ground outside the stadium where all the teams would be lined up. We had our white flannel pants and our Pat Boone shoes and straw hat. We were pretty close to the end. Hitler and Goering and Goebbels and all the so-called big shots were together there. They had a part in their ceremonies. So we were very close to where they were standing.
From the archway of the Marathon Gates, enter the athletes of 49 nations led by the Greeks, as is their right for having originated the Games. The others follow in alphabetical order, with the French receiving the biggest applause. Then come the boys and girls of the USA. 400 strong, second only to Germany in numbers. They receive a cordial, if not overwhelming, welcome when their massive columns appear. But just as they arrive at the dais, the German contingent comes into sight. Immediately, the band stops the march it is playing and breaks into Deutschland über alles. The audience rises and promptly freezes into silent attention. So the Americans march not to applause, but to the German national anthem.
After we'd all assembled, the nations who were there, the head of state can only say, I declare this Olympiad open.
Ich verkünde die Spiele von Berlin zur Feier der 11. Olympiade neuer Zeitrechnung als eröffnet.
That is the only words he may utter for the whole Olympics. He's not allowed to give a speech or to say anything else. After he said that, 5,000 German voices sang the Hallelujah chorus. And they released carrier pigeons to go all over the world to tell them the Olympic is open. That was a very thrilling moment.
We had these navy blue coats on, and so, you know, it was kind of a mad scramble there for a few minutes while these pigeons were going around in circles trying to find where they're supposed to go. And a few guys got direct hits.
A runner arrives, holding high a torch lit at the site of the ancient games in Olympia, Greece. Through day and night, rain and shine, over 3,000 runners carry the flame to Berlin. As he touches the torch to the cauldron, a mighty flame burst forth.
And that's how the Olympics were opened.
Ich war seinerzeit 12 Jahre alt und war sehr oft hier in diesem Stadion. Ich habe verschiedene Wettkämpfe hier gesehen. Mein Vater, der hatte die Möglichkeit, für mich dann auch die entsprechenden Eintrittskarten zu bekommen. Mein Portemonnaie war nicht so dick. Das heißt, ich hatte meistens die Plätze hier oben als Stehplätze. Und dann mit meinem kleinen Fernrohr von hier oben konnte ich alles wunderbar sehen.
Weil unsere Karten ja spurlos verschwunden waren. Aber wir kannten ja Schleichwege so ein bisschen. Und da haben wir hier ganz oben in dem Oberring gestanden. Sitzen haben wir uns nicht getraut, die sollten uns ja nicht erwischen.
On Sunday, August 2nd, the track and field competitions begin. For the next 10 days, the nations of the world will battle for athletic supremacy. The Germans take an early lead. Hans Woke, a burly German shot putter, captures the first gold medal. He is the first German ever to win an Olympic track and field event. Hitler congratulates him in his personal box. The crowd cheers and salutes Hitler with each victory.
Hier, da waren wir mit im Stadion. Das ist der Gerhard Stöck. Der hat das Speerwerfen gewonnen. Und anfangs war jemand besser oder zwei sogar. Und da hat sich dann ein Chor zusammengetan und dann wurde plötzlich gerufen, Stöck, Stöck, sei so nett, werf doch über 70 weg. Hat er geschafft. Ob der Chor gemacht hat oder er es von allein geschafft hat, kann ich nicht beurteilen.
With the first day drawing to a close, America has yet to reach the medal stand. The last hope for the United States is the high jump. Americans Cornelius Johnson and Dave Albritton face off against the world's best. 110,000 mesmerized fans watch the high jumpers defy gravity.
Meters high. That's 6 feet 8 inches. And Johnson of America. First, Johnson, America, a new Olympic record of 6 foot 8 inches.
As Cornelius Johnson and Dave Albritton take their places on the medal stand, Hitler abruptly leaves the stadium. Reporters mistakenly write stories of Hitler snubbing not Cornelius or Dave, but Jesse Owens. In the aftermath of the incident, Olympic organizers asked Hitler to either receive all the medal winners or none. He chose the latter. However, Hitler secretly greets German winners and others he favors. The combination of athletic triumphs and racial novelty turned the 18 African Americans into stars. Louise Stokes becomes one of the most photographed women in Berlin, and all taste of freedom and celebrity unknown to them back home.
I had a German colonel invite me out to his home for dinner one night. I had dinner with he and his 2 daughters and his wife. Very pleasant. 2 or 3 of us went along. We saw no sign of any intolerance of any type among the people. Now, among the Nazis, I don't know, because I had very little to do with them.
Hier auf diesen schönen Bild, der Junge, der da zwischen den beiden Italienern sitzt, das bin ich im Alter von 12 Jahren. Und ich habe immer das kleine Büchlein in der Hand gehabt und dann haben sie schon gewusst, derjenige, der so ein Büchlein hat, auch gerne eine Unterschrift hat. Und so habe ich inzwischen dann eben 60 Unterschriften in meinem Büchlein und das existiert eben zum Glück heute noch. Und für mich ist es ein ganz besonderer Schatz und es wird weiter an die nächsten Generationen übergeben.
Da standen die Mädchen in Scharen und die haben natürlich vor allem auch zu den schwarzen Athleten geschaut. Und angeblich waren auch einige mit deutschen Mädels befreundet. Aber da ist auch gibt es viele Gerüchte und Legenden. Man sprach von einem Love Garden zum Beispiel. There was a rumor of a love garden.
With the 100-meter race only hours away, Ralph Metcalfe focuses solely on avenging the 1932 decision.
The 6 fastest sprinters of the world are getting ready. Owens, America. Grossmeyer, Germany. And Metcalfe of America.
My daddy took me to see the movie-tone news version of the 1936 Olympics. And I can remember going to a segregated movie, which we didn't do often. But he thought that was important. So we climbed up in the balcony and we saw the 100 meters.
Owens is ahead. Strandberg and Grossmeyer fighting. Osendorf challenges Wyckoff. Metcalfe comes up. But Owens wins at 10.3. Second, Metcalfe, America. Third, Osendorf.
Owens bests Metcalfe by 1/10 of a second to win his first gold medal.
He stayed out till 4 in the morning the night after he lost to Jesse in the 100 meters. Hung up his cleats.
More bad news will come. Heavyweight Art Oliver loses in the second round. Middleweight James Clark loses on a controversial call in the quarterfinals. The American boxing coach mysteriously places Howell King and Joe Church on a ship back to Manhattan. The coach offers homesick boxers as the explanation. Howell attributes the dismissal to coaches wanting Rutecki in his spot.
Schon in den 20er Jahren war das Auftreten von schwarzen Boxern zum Beispiel eine Riesensensation. Und wenn dann noch der Schwarze geschlagen wurde, war das natürlich, die Menschen waren besonders begeistert. Und nachdem dann 1936 im Stadion vor allem man diese Leichtathleten gesehen hatte, gut aussehende, großgewachsene Athleten, die tolle Leistungen brachten, waren die Menschen natürlich begeistert.
For the 400 meters, we had to run 5 races in 2 days. Arch and I got through all our 4, winning each one.
The next day was finals. On the way, they had this German driver, Coach Robertson, pointed and said, go that way. And the guy says, no, that way. They kept arguing to the point where the guy says, oh, the hell with it. And he got out and was going to walk away. Well, Jimmy LaValle could speak some German. He went out and conned him into taking this there. Otherwise, we wouldn't have made it.
And here it is. Brown's in the outside lane there. Next to him, Williams, the American Negro. Williams is a beautiful mover. He's a Black Panther. He's not waiting, he's cutting loose. He's coming up on the back stretch, very threatening. He's gaining, hand over fist. Brown's going well, but he's leaving it too late. That Negro's dangerous.
I timed it so that I'd hit my spurt coming off of the last turn. And that was the only time when I was really worried. At that point, the curved lanes merge in with the straightaway lanes.
There's Roberts and LaValle on the inside. LaValle's going strong. Roberts is challenging him, but Williams leads.
Came around to the final 100 yards. At that point, I believe I was in the lead, but I made a couple of mistakes around there.
Everybody was doing his best, and they probably pulling up on me a little, but I managed to hold him off.
First, Williams of America. And here's LaValle, very happy to have taken 3rd place.
Louise Stokes and Tidy Pickett live with other women athletes from around the world in a dormitory near the stadium. A hand-picked group of young German women attend to every need of the female competitors, including Tidy and Louise.
There's one small picture that we have of Mother, and she is waving from a window from Olympic Village. They were very well received. Actually, surprisingly, I think they were surprised, actually, considering the experiences that they'd had here about how well received they were.
There was nothing in that part of her experience that she felt was a challenge. Everyone from all across the world were very open and loving, and, you know, it was just a wonderful place to be.
On the morning of the women's 80-meter hurdles, the sky is overcast, the track damp. Tidy Pickett warms up, preparing an assault on Babe Dietrichson's world record.
One of the things that my mother used to do when she was going over the hurdles is she had a habit of dragging her foot. And in the United States, it would hit and go over. Mother started training with Jesse Owens to try to overcome that here. And she'd done a really excellent job doing that.
Tidy easily advances to the semifinals, where she draws the outside lane.
When she got to Germany, however, the horses, they were stationary. And so when she jumped over and dragged that foot, and I don't know if it was nervous or whatever, they were a little higher, I'm not really sure, but it did move, and that's how she broke her foot.
Louise watches the medics carry her friend off the field. At that moment, she vows to win gold for Tidy.
Everybody figured it was a no-brainer. Louise Stokes was going to run in the Olympics, and the whole world will see.
Stokes stretches and warms up on the morning of the women's relay. Just minutes before Louise takes the starting blocks, the track coach pulls Louise from the race. For the second time, a white athlete replaces Louise on the American relay team. Louise Stokes will never run another race.
Louise Stokes, the first black woman to make a U.S. Olympic team, never got to show her stuff.
Just imagine how hard it was. Everyone knows how hard it was for the men. Just imagine being a woman with absolutely no support. And the guys on the team might have wanted to support them, but they had no leverage to say, hey, you know, that's wrong. She ought to be running. I mean, she's faster, she's better, she's proven herself.
My mother didn't compete because of lack of talent. My mother didn't compete because of politics.
Racial politics continue to be devil of the U.S. team.
They had brought 4 fellows over to run in the 4x100 relay. Cromwell and Brundage decided to put Ralph Metcalf, Jesse Owens, Wyckoff, and Draper in the 4x100 relay, and the 2 other fellows, Glickman and Stoller, who had come over to run that race, were told they couldn't run. Well, those boys were heartbroken. And it was also quite obvious that it had not been done fairly.
Angry and hurt, Marty Glickman confronts the American coach, demanding to know, is it because I'm Jewish that I didn't get to run?
They switched the Olympic team around to kick the Jews off to appease Hitler. And it's ironic that that injustice was the enabling factor in him getting his only Olympic gold medal.
He seemed to float through space.
The
giant American Negro Woodruff, its favorite. And takes the lead.
120,000 people in the crowded stadium watched American athletes write a new chapter in the history of sports as the boys and girls of the United States track and field team carried Old Glory time and again to victory.
When the Berlin Games conclude, America's black athletes have dominated their events. Uncle Sam's boys and girls have amassed a total of 167 Olympic points, fully half of them earned by African Americans, including 8 gold medals. The Nazi newspaper Der Angriff, The Attack, writes that if the American team had not brought along the black auxiliaries, one would have regarded the Yankees as the biggest disappointment of the games.
Hitler thought that his athletes were just going to take all the medals, and he certainly didn't think that, you know, African Americans, of course we weren't African Americans then, we were Negroes then, or colored people. He certainly didn't think that they would beat his champions. It did break the color barrier.
The Nazi regime, they filmed everything and basically disproved their theory, and in turn proved that African Americans not only had the wherewithal, but the ability to compete at the highest level. As an African American, and you disprove that theory, you have something that you can hang your hat on at home to combat the Jim Crow laws in the United States at that time.
Black newspapers sing the praises of the 18 black athletes, but the mainstream press focuses on Jesse Owens. His 4 gold medals become legendary and an important tool in America's propaganda campaign. The exploitive concentration on a single hero versus Hitler pushes the other black teammates into the background and ultimately out of the story. Even Jesse Owens the man did not receive nearly the recognition of Jesse Owens the myth.
I mean, if anybody refused to shake Jesse Owens' hand, it wasn't Adolf Hitler. It was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was vitally dependent upon the whites from the South for re-election. There was no way that he was going to have a Negro, not even a Jesse Owens, to the White House.
Avery Brundage banned Jesse Owens from any further competition because Jesse Owens didn't travel with the American team to other parts of Europe to make money for the AAU.
The tragedy of it is that he was no longer able to compete as an amateur. He never did make too much out of the fact that he'd won all these medals. Well, nobody would offer him something that they should have.
Stripped of his amateur status, Jesse Owens turns to running staged matches against race horses.
That's the real tragedy. And they came back to a country that they represented successfully, and the country turned its back on them and closed its eyes and wanted them to drift off and go away.
The Germans knew who they were, but when it came back to the United States, it tells you a lot about American attitudes towards African Americans. That really, if you won a bronze medal in the hurdles, that didn't carry the same weight as the propaganda use of Jesse versus Hitler.
At that time, you can just imagine coming back and then still not being recognized like athletes are now. Now you can get on a Wheaties box. Of course, you know, that wasn't possible, but John Brooks was more bitter about job opportunities and being in the United States and not being equal.
Mac Robinson came back with a silver medal, and the sad thing is he got a job sweeping the streets at night, and it was cold, and he would wear his Olympic jacket to keep himself warm.
But you go in any black community, you're gonna find a hero. It was something that was been heard about, read about, you know. You go into the black speakeasies, whatever have you, and that's what's on there. That was on their lips. It's great to be a star in the neighborhood. My mother was. And them stars made stars. And to make sure that it kept going.
I think that if you had had that boycott, you would definitely not have had a Jackie Robinson 10 years later. Without Olympians in that era, I just think that something like the mass integration of sports that occurs in the 40s and 50s probably takes another decade or two longer.
When you say, was it a precursor to the civil rights movement, they go hand in hand. That was a civil rights movement without it really being spoken or said.
What makes this also so important is that the mythology after the 36 games, as we go into the 40s and 50s and 60s, people are looking for moments where African Americans have done something transformative. It says to people clearly in the United States, well, you know what? Maybe African Americans can play a bigger role in not only shaping who we are, but helping us achieve our ends.
From that struggle for legitimacy, which became the foundation of the struggle for access, which became integrated into nonviolent direct action, and so forth, primed the pump for Dr. King.
We overcame a lot of bridges to get to where we were in 1968. And those bridges in 1936 caused us to move like we did later on in life. One bridge to the next, from 36 to 68.
It all goes back to 1936, all the years where they fought a different fight than we fight. They fought too. They fought to win and to compete and to train, but they fought just to survive, just to be welcome.
They were preparing to open the Holocaust Museum. I felt strongly compelled. I wanted to go there. They have a film that we could actually view. And as they began to show the story, of course, they showed the procession of the Olympic. And to our amazement, we saw our mother. It was pretty moving. It was pretty moving when you think about your parents, all of them crossing barriers. Here's someone else's history of their tragedy and their triumph. And our mother was a part of that. It's pretty extraordinary. Sorry.
Those 18 African-American members of the U.S. Olympic team had represented this nation. They all are the ones who paved the way for those of us who are here today. And we need to respect what they did. We need to understand their experiences. To not be treated equally must have been a horrible feeling. And yet, they persevered.
None of us on the track team expected to continue in track. When I came home, I spent a year at UCLA for a master's and then went on to Caltech and spent 3 years to get my doctorate.
I got in the program in mechanical engineering, and that's when I heard about Tuskegee Institute, so I wrote down there. And then they found out I knew how to fly. I started off instructing in the civilian program, and then I ended up instructing in the Army primary program.
These are athletes who did something really important at a seminal point in human history. Not African-American history, not American history, in human history. They did something incredibly important.
They not only showed them that they were human beings, but they showed them in an exceptional way that they were the best of the best.
As sure as the flame burned in our hearts, no one believed we'd get this far. Some say they don't know why we tried. Well, I guess it's a matter of our pride. I've spent a lifetime of emotions, shed an ocean full of tears, but still there is a moment of fear. I will run right through it. I will run to prove it. me, I will run right through it, find my victory. Find my victory. The world doesn't know I have a name, but they're gonna see I've made a way. Why would they say it can't be done?